Hey there, lovely person. Welcome and simian blessings be upon you. I'm Monkey Jesus and I'm giddy to have this opportunity to present this, my top 10 most important Commodore 64 games as a kid list. Now, I was lucky enough to get one a few years after my CPC, and I loved my 64 then, and I still do to this day. Me and my dad bought it from a car boot sale at Milton Keynes Hospital, where I'd go on to buy games for it. My friend Warren also owned one, and my friend Clint. Both of them had good games and I bought all of them. So, without any further babbling, let's start with the first game, and like the CPC list before it, number 10 is a bit of an odd one. Though this time I did actually have it. But it's not a game. I know, boo hiss. It's number 10, Micro Rhythm. Yes, as I've stated, it's not a game, it's a drum machine, but it was still marketed like a game. It was fun and inspiring for a young aspiring music monkey to mess with. I found out some years later there were other versions, including Micro Disco, Micro Latin, Micro Tuned and Micro Vocals, all with different sample sets to make different genres of music. The samples were great at the time and sounded meaty, and all for $1.99, at least 100 times less expensive than the actual drum machine. You have patterns of 8 beats and you can arrange the patterns into songs like a sequencer. Other features include pitch control for each beat and flam, which give neat results. It's all fairly easy to use and intuitive, and if you're so inclined, you too can be creating beats within minutes. Simon Pick, who developed Microrhythm, also created Dead Old Ernest and Slimy's Mind for the C64, and Rodland for the NES. Number 9 is Eyeball. Well, this one isn't here because it's a good game. In fact, in my opinion, it's a pretty forgettable game. But it does have one thing going for it, and that's the soundtrack. A cracking Rob Hubbard theme, and lots of lovely speech created by Simon Pick. This was the game that convinced me that the Commodore 64 sound chip for SID was a serious bit of kit, and it made me pester my dad to buy our 64 when we found it at the boot sale. So therefore, it's important. The game itself is a vertical scrolling shooter, and you control the titular eyeball through 16 levels to rescue your 4 friends, Lovable, Edible, Global, and Noble. And there's weapon upgrades aplenty. It's not a great game, but it's an important game. In at 8 is Whizball. It took me a while to warm to Whizball, but I kept coming back to it, and eventually I got what you were supposed to do, and after that I was hooked. You play as Whiz, aka Whizball, and your cat Nifter, aka Catalite. You shoot the bad guys, you collect the paint, you move on. It's simple, fun, and immaculately presented. The Martin Galway soundtrack is the bee's knees, with the Gary Moore-esque Game Over solo being a highlight for me as a kid. Big fun. At number 7 is Double Dragon 2. Now, as I mentioned in my CPC list, I was potty about Double Dragon. I was never able to track down a copy for the Amstrad, so when I saw rave reviews of Double Dragon 2 for the Commodore 64, I was all over it. You play as either Bimmy or Jimmy, and you have to rescue your girlfriend, again, from a motley gang of bad bastards. For me, this was as close to Double Dragon as I was going to get on the 8-bits. Still fun today. In at 6 is Microprose Soccer. As I have previously stated on the CPC list, I was footy mad as a kid, and I had all the football games. King of all of them was Microprose Soccer. It was fast, fluid, and most importantly, it was fun. It had all the Fs. I played this game to death. I loved the banana kicks and wouldn't ever tire of curving the ball around the keeper and watching the replay. A revolutionary feature at the time. Sensi Software at the top of the game at this point, and Microprose Soccer is a testament to that. A killer app for the humble beige bread bin for sure. Even if you didn't like sports games, this was still appealing due to its polish and playability. Sensible were legends, hence the second entry on the list, and their story is an interesting one. If you don't already know it, I urge you to, after this video, go watch Kim Justice's final word on the subject of sensible software. Links below. And so to the top 5, and in at 5, IK+. Well, this was always going to be on the list. IK Plus was the title to have back in 1987, and the Commodore 64 original was the version to have. I remember it being a demo game on the Commodore 64 in the window of Softly, a game shop in central Milton Keynes shopping centre, and me being captivated by its awesomeness. 3 players! And all the little background touches. It was a thing of beauty to behold and wonder over. I noticed that when the demo had finished, it displayed the high scores, and that there was a message contained within it. Why not try pressing T? With this discovery, I ran into the shop and told the man behind the counter what I had noticed, and could we try it? We did, and nothing happened. I was let down. I thought about it between visits to the shop, and I realised that maybe we should have tried pressing T during the game. instead of the title screen. So again, on my next visit I told the guy, and he reluctantly indulged me with much eye rolling, and we tried it in the game, and the best Easter egg ever happened, and I gleefully yicked and squeaked as the player's trousers fell down. This was exactly what my 10-year-old self found funny. This was the first time a game had made me laugh, and it's memorable and important for that reason. The soundtrack is phenomenal, with lots of digitised speech, again by Simon Pitt, and one of Rob Hubbard's most iconic tunes. I think the Commodore 64 is incomplete without a copy of IK Plus and some mates to pummel. And the number 4 spot goes to Fiendish Freddy. This came on the only game cartridge I owned for the Commodore 64, and I acquired it from an annoying kid at school called John Hobby. He owned a 64 GS, and he gave it to me when I asked him to borrow it, which was weird because it was the only game he had. I kept expecting him to ask for it back, but he never did. Fiendish Freddy's Big Top of Fun, to give it its full title, was the perfect game to come on a cartridge. It negated lots of disk loading and time waiting around for the 1541 to do its thing. The presentation is highly polished, there are cutscenes aplenty, big well animated sprites, and plenty of humour. Although not as visually stunning as the 16-bit versions, it still managed to push the VIC and look pretty damn good. There's 6 circus related minigames on offer: high diving, juggling, trapeze, knife throwing, tightrope, and cannonball. It's reminiscent of Epix's games and for sure Tynesoft's circus games. I loved all of the events, but trapeze was my favourite, and I was quite good at getting across, facing increasing numbers of hazards along the way. A great conversion and an instant fix of fun if you have it on cartridge. Also, that cartridge came with Fimbo's Quest International Soccer, as well as Clax. It's an absolute Commodore 64 must-have. We're now at the top 3, and in at 3, Speedball 2. Here we have the uber-violent cyberpunk sequel to Speedball. By 1990, the Bitmap brothers, it's fair to say, were the epitome of cool. Their Rockstar image and back catalogue of smash hits, including Xenon 1 and 2 and Speedball, meant that to say Speedball 2 was highly anticipated is a colossal understatement. I had played a lot of Speedball on the Atari ST, so I was definitely among those keen to play Speedball 2. The trouble is, it was $19.95 for the ST, which for a young monkey was prohibitively expensive. Fortunately, it was ported to the C64, and it was half the price, so I was set about pestering my dad, going to great lengths to explain that the C64 port was a bargain, showing him previews and generally being a nuisance till eventually he caved and bought me it. And boy, what a game. Fast, and indeed brutal. It obviously doesn't have the graphics of the 16-bit versions, but it sure has the playability, superior to the original in every way. It had the awesome power-ups the Bitmap brothers were known for. I was hooked for weeks, and I would regularly come back to it after that initial period. I eventually got to play Speedball 2 on the ST, and yeah, it was super flashy, but the C64 had my heart, and still is my preferred version. At number 2, Software House. I loved management games as a kid, and this was my go-to on the Commodore 64. The idea of the game is to become the top software house. To achieve this, you hire a staff member, acquire a game from the list of 3, and negotiate a royalty percentage with the coder, and if your offer is considered worthy, you set about publishing the game. You can then choose the packaging and pick an artist to do the cover art, and then you can delegate using 3 tasks each staff member allows you, such as tape duplication, setting the price, and with your remaining tasks it's recommended that you promote your game and or company. This game works month by month, and at the end of every month you read that month's issue of the number 1 computer magazine. There are of course pitfalls along the way. You find out about these incidents as news in the magazine, and you can be sure your company will be subject to arson, and all of your tape stock will be lost. Also, don't hope to keep employees long, as they will no doubt leave you, they will leave me, the moment your company starts to falter. It's all about the right strategy. I found out long after that this is just a slightly updated version of Kevin Tom's Software Star, but to me it was always its own thing, and it brought out my inner David Darling. Good times. And my number 1 most important Commodore 64 game as a kid is Pirates. Avast mateys, embrace the mainsail and set course for fun. Pirates is another game that, like Elite, that just captured my young monkey mind, and it's fast in scale like it too. You choose a home nation from England, Spain, Holland and France, and then you're free to explore a vast open world in which you can choose your path to glory and fortune. being as much pirate as you choose to be. You could even not be a pirate at all and just haul goods and play defensively. The whole Caribbean was your playground. There were just so many elements of this game that coalesced into one cohesive experience that just fired my imagination. It was the first experience I had of Sid Meier, whose games I've adored ever since. In fact, this was my favourite ever game up until Civilization Revolution came along in 2008, which was also by Sid Meier. In my opinion, this is as close as you can get to perfection on the Commodore 64, and a stunning feat at the time. It garnered a reimagining in 2001 for the Xbox PC and PS2, and was also the main inspiration behind Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Black Flag. It was by far and away my most played Commodore game. Well, that concludes my top 10 list of most important Commodore 64 games as a kid list. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and hit that like button. It would help me out and encourage me to make more. Thank you for watching, and until the next time, keep it retro and live your best life. Monkey Jesus, out.